All right, everybody. So it is 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to this Aiming for Access webinar, where we're going to talk about POUR, P-O-U-R. My name is Luis Perez, and I'm a Disability and Digital Inclusion Lead at CAST. And I'm so happy that you're with us this afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started here with the slides. So first of all, happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day today. This is a really special day. I think this is the 13th one. It's an opportunity to celebrate all the progress that we made with regard to accessibility and then to reflect on the work that needs to be done. So I encourage you to visit accessibility.day, learn more about the many events that are taking place today to celebrate accessibility. Lots of disability and accessibility organizations do webinars today. We're happy to contribute to that by doing this one. And then many companies announce new accessibility features. So a couple to look out for. Apple just announced that later this year, they will have built-in eye tracking using the built-in cameras on their iPad and iPhone. So you'll be able to control your device using your eyes. It will track your eyes so that you can basically navigate just like you would with a mouse or your fingers, you would navigate using your eyes. And then Microsoft just released a new controller for gamers who have disabilities, right? Because we want everything to be accessible, not just education and work, but also leisurely activities. So I encourage you to check out Global Accessibility Awareness Day. In that spirit, we always start our presentations by sharing our accessibility commitments. So we've tried our best to make this presentation as accessible as possible. I do an accessibility check with a built-in Office accessibility checker. Encourage you all to get into the habit of doing that. That's a great way to catch many of the low-hanging fruit of accessibility, right? By doing that accessibility check. And the best accessibility checkers, including the one that's built into Office, they just don't point out the errors. They actually tell you how to fix them. So that's what I love about using that built-in accessibility checker. We do some manual checks as well, because, built-in accessibility checkers, it's an automated accessibility check. So it's not going to catch everything. So we do some manual checks as well. And then we also want to share the slides with you so that you can customize the experience as needed. So just in case you didn't get it at the beginning, you can download the slides for yourself. I'm going to drop the link in the chat here. It's a bit.ly, bit.ly/POUR, the number 4 AEM. And POUR and AIM are capitalized. So if you want to do that, you can use the short link, or you could also scan the QR code, and that will give you access to these slides so that you can follow along on your own device and you can customize those slides as needed. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about POUR, which is the 4 principles that are on my t-shirt. So once again, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And these are the 4 core principles of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that are an international standard for accessibility and that often informs lots of national accessibility laws, including our own Section 508 here in the United States. And so the latest version of that standard, that international standard, is version 2.2 that was released in the fall, in October of last year. And we're going to go over, of course, we only have a half hour today. So what I'm going to do is cover each of the principles and then give you an example of a check that you could perform to make sure that you're meeting that principle as you design your content. So the first principle, the P in POUR, is perceivable. And the graphic that we have here just shows different ways that people might access information. Traditionally, it's been a hard copy book or maybe even a Braille book, which is what this illustration shows. But increasingly, it's becoming digital, right? And so we're accessing it on a desktop computer. We have a monitor here that has the captions turned on, or mobile devices. Well, we have lots of options, just like we do on the desktop, to customize the experience by changing the text size or by maybe listening to the information. So the whole idea behind perceivable is that we want to make sure that the material is usable, or the content is usable by learners with very sensory disabilities. So we want to make sure that you can access the information in multiple ways and that we're not relying on just one of the senses. So if you can't hear the information, you can still access the captions. And if you can't, see the information, you can still hear it because you provided a text alternative so that it can be read out loud. So both of those, are options. So that's the goal here: is to provide options so that if you're not able to use one of the senses, you have an alternative. So with Perceivable, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that all of our visuals have an alternative, a text alternative. And I want to share with you a great tool called the Accessible Name and Description Inspector, or ANDY, ANDY. And it's a free tool that was created by the Social Security Administration. It was like, tag you are it. You're the agency that's going to create this tool that's used throughout the federal government to perform Section 508 checks. And again, Section 508 is our federal accessibility law. Technically, it only impacts the federal government and its agencies because the federal government is such a huge entity, it impacts the government as a whole. It's often adopted at the state and local level as well. So the great thing about Andy is free. So let me ask you in the chat: is free in the budget? I think free is in the budget, right? And it's the other great thing about it is that it's a browser bookmark or bookmarklet. So that means you just add it to your browser and it works across a number of different browsers. And so that you can use it on any web-based content. And it's a modular tool. So it has a number of different modules that you use to perform different Section 508 accessibility checks. And I see the request. Hopefully you got the link, but let me know if you're still having issues with the links for the slides, and I'll try to address that. So we're going to explore just one use of Andy, which is to check for alternative text. So I'm going to switch over out of here, out of the slides, and bring up one of my favorite websites. And I'm a little biased, so give me 1 second here while I bring that up. Of course, it's the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, right? This is the group that I'm part of CAST, that's bringing you this webinar. So I've already installed Andy, and typically I add it to my favorites bar so that I have it accessible all of the time. And so what I'll do is I'll select the bookmark. It's as simple as that. You select the bookmark, and then there's lots of different modules here. And again, we're not going to cover all of this because we only have a half hour, but I want to show you one of the modules that I use the most, which is the graphics or images module. And there's a variety of different ways that you can use this module from Andy. You can use the arrow keys that are available here. It's also keyboard accessible and screen reader accessible. So I could go from one image to the next, just like that. And as I do this, you're going to see a highlight appear on the page or a border. And then you're going to see something that says Andy output. And it has a little icon of a person with like sound waves coming out of it. And that shows you what a screen reader will read out when it gets to this image. So this gives you a really good approximation of what the screen reader experience would be with this visual. So here it's the CAST logo. I would hear CAST. And I can continue moving through the page and hear all of the other images. Now this one, it has no Andy output. And the reason for that is that it's part of a button, and the button has a label. But we want to make sure, sometimes you'll see that Andy doesn't have any output. That's because the image is marked up as decoration, meaning that it's designed to be skipped by a screen reader. So that's something you want to confirm. Is this image really decoration, or is it described in some other way? So this is the module that I use quite a bit. I'll go through the images on the page. Let me go to a different page here just to show you. I'm going to go to the Designing for Accessibility page. And just to show you, there's a different way that you can use it, which is the way that I prefer to use it, which is to just select the graphics module and then just point your cursor at an image. And it will give you the output, the Andy output, which again is a simulation of what a screen reader would read out loud. And I can do that for any of these graphics here on this page. And you'll see that the Andy output for this one is illustration of a series of media representing various ways of interacting with the same content on a range of tools. So that is Andy. Let me go back to the slides here. And again, just to summarize, free, it's a browser bookmark, so there's nothing to install. You can use it on any web-based content. And it's also modular. So I just showed you one module, but there are other modules that you can use to, for instance, test the heading structure or make sure that links are descriptive. So there's a lot you can do with Andy. That's just one use of it. Let me pause here, see if there are any questions about everything that I've talked about so far. So this is just that first principle of perceivable. We want to make sure that the information is perceivable to, a variety of different senses. There's multiple ways for you to get the information through the senses. And I apologize for my voice. I just got in at 1 o'clock last night after traveling all week. Stephanie, so basically Andy is just helping you check make sure that the web-based resource has appropriate alternative text. To change it, then you would have to have access to that page as a designer or a developer, and then you could go in and change it. But the reason why I'm showing you this, because in education, we're often not creating resources. Sometimes we're vetting or we're selecting resources to include in the curriculum. So just performing a quick check like this can help you determine, is this something that I want to share with learners, right? Or is this something that maybe I want to look for another option to make sure that it's more accessible? Does that make sense, Stephanie? Great, fantastic. And please let me know if you have any questions at any point. Happy to try to answer them. And if not, we can hit the books if you stump me. So let me pause again. Great. Chandra, definitely share it with your marketing team, because the marketing team is often the one developing those communications that go out to everybody. So we want to make sure that when we are including visuals, they have a text alternative. And there's a lot more to each of these principles, right? But I only have a half hour, so I'm covering one thing for each of them. So the next principle here is operable. And with operable, as the graphic shows, we want to make sure that people can navigate in different ways and that they can use a variety of tools to interact with the content, to interact with the tools. And so here you have on the screen, we have somebody who's tapping on a mobile device. We have a hard copy book where you're able to flip the pages. We have a screen with different buttons that hopefully are labeled so that you know what they represent. We have a switch device. We have a keyboard. And then, of course, the mouse, which is the most common input method that we use. But also your voice can be an input method. So we want to make sure that you're able to use voice commands as well. And increasingly, that's the way that people are interacting with their environment. So here's the key to the principle. So we want to make sure that everybody is able to navigate and respond in a variety of ways. If we only allow people to interact with the mouse, well, there's a lot of people that can't use the mouse, right? If I'm blind, I can't really use the mouse because I don't know where the cursor is to move it around. So I might use the keyboard or I might use a trackpad with some gestures. And so we want to make sure that we test for keyboard accessibility, because if it works with the keyboard, it likely will work with other tools. So here's my challenge to you. My challenge to you is to try out the No Mouse Challenge today on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Just take 5 minutes to help build awareness and try this out on your favorite website or a website that you use a lot with learners. So basically, the No Mouse Challenge is one of the first accessibility tests that we do when we're checking for accessibility. It is a test of keyboard accessibility. So we want to check for 3 things. We want to make sure, I'm going to start with the middle one here, that you can get to everything with the keyboard, that you can get through all of the options. So if, for example, if you have a menu, you're able to navigate through all of the options in that menu, and then you can get out of that menu or continue past the current item. And so the phrase that I typically use is to, through, and out. But in order for you able to navigate, you also need a visible focus indicator that has sufficient contrast. So with the No Mouse Challenge, essentially the most basic aspect of this test is that you're going to press the keyboard, press the tab key on your keyboard, and it should move the focus indicator to the next interactive item, which could be a link, could be a button, something that you're able to interact with. And you want to make sure that as that visible focus indicator moves around, that it moves around in a logical order. So it's not going from first name to what do you want to eat for dinner, and then back up to last name. But you want to make sure that you're moving from first name, last name, a way that makes logical sense. So let's take a look at the No Mouse Challenge, real quick demo here. And once again, I'm going to bring up my favorite website. I'm not biased or anything. So here's what you do with No Mouse Challenge. I'm going to take a shortcut here. Typically, you would put your cursor in the web address at the top of the screen, and then you would start pushing the tab key on your keyboard, right? And because I have a bunch of tabs here, I'm going to skip part of that, and I'm just going to click right at the top of the page here, near the beginning of it, and I'm going to press the tab key. And now you'll notice that CAST, the logo, has an outline around it. And if I press again, just pressing the tab key, it goes to National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. So that's the logo for the AIM Center. Press the tab key, it goes to search, tab key again, the search button. And then I get to the menu. And for the menu, it's a little bit different. I could press the tab key to go to the next option. Here's how you navigate back. You hold down the shift key, and then you press tab on your keyboard. So you can go forward with tab, backwards with shift and tab. And then within the menu, this is the expected interaction model. You should be able to press the arrow keys, open up the menu, and using the up and down arrow keys, get to all of the options, right? Remember to, through, and out. And then for getting out, I should be able to press the escape key. And that closes the menu. So if you read up the instructions on the No Mouse Challenge, which is at nomouse.org, it will explain all of this. But this is a really basic test because, again, if it works with the keyboard like this, a lot of screen reader users use the keyboard. A lot of people with physical disabilities who might be using switch interfaces, they will also kind of simulate using the keyboard because they'll use their switches to navigate in this very same way. So again, we want to make sure that as you press the tab key, it's moving around in a logical way, right? So it doesn't go from get started to about us to create. It goes get started, acquire, create, use, and so on. And then we have a visual indicator so that we know where we are as we press the tab key or the shift tab option. I'll pause there, see if there are any questions about that. But if you do one thing today on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, I would say that would be it. Is to just try something with the No Mouse Challenge. Set yourself that challenge today, or share this with somebody else and have them do it. So that, again, you're building the community, you're building awareness of accessibility. Because this will uncover like the most significant barriers very quickly. It'll give you a sense for whether the experience is accessible or not. Let me see any questions or anything I can help with as we kind of reach the back half here of our webinar. Andrea says, yes, keyboard shortcuts are my favorite, necessary for some, beneficial for all feature. By the way, power users, right? To your point, Andrea, power users often use keyboard shortcuts because it's often faster to do that. Elda says, no mouse feels like trying to drive without a steering wheel. Well, but you'll get the hang of it at some point. Although I do recommend having a steering wheel. That can be helpful. So I see a bunch of questions coming up. I don't, Rachel, to your point, this is a manual test that you're performing, right? So it's not going to notify anybody, but it does give you a sense of, oh, is this thing accessible that I'm going to use? Maybe I should look for something else, right? And often I find that like a lot of government resources are pretty good when it comes to adding alternative text because they have to conform to Section 508. So if I'm teaching a science class, I might look at resources from like NASA for instance, or any of the other government agencies, right, that put out a lot of content to the public. All right, in the interest of time, because we just have about 10 minutes left, but these are the two big principles, right? If you can make it perceivable, if you can make it operable, you've gone a long way towards creating a more accessible experience, but that doesn't mean that the other principles are not as important. So the next one's understandable. And here we want to make sure that we're creating an intuitive and predictable experience. So we have a consistent and predictable structure, and then language that is appropriate for the audience. And there is the standards do state like the level of language that you should aim for if you're designing for the general public, right? And then, but if you're designing for learners in other grades, right, that are not within that specification in the standard, then just make sure that you meet the audience, right? You meet the language level of the audience, and that the language is appropriate. So one aspect of understandable is jargon. We love to use, jargon in education. So, and whenever possible, try to minimize the use of jargon, or if you're going to use jargon, at least explain it the first time. So I did that in this presentation. When I share Andy, right, I gave you the full name of it, the accessible name and description inspector. So making sure that we are supporting vocabulary by providing those explanations the first time that we use an acronym or the first time that we use an abbreviation can be really helpful for understanding. So I do have some tips here. First of all, the federal government has developed something called the Plain Language Guidelines. And in the past, when I did this presentation, I used to share readability checking tools. And there are a number of them out there, and they can be somewhat helpful, but I no longer share those just because I don't know what they're doing. They're like black boxes. They don't tell you exactly how they're figuring out that algorithm. So instead, what I've started doing is sharing the plain language guidelines. Because as somebody mentioned in the chat, essential for some, helpful for all. And so this is part of an initiative that started with President Obama back in 2010 to really make the communications for the federal government easier to understand. And so the guidelines really call for 9th to 10th grade. If you use a readability checker, that's what they'll typically recommend for the general public. But I think basically what you want to do is make sure that, like I said, you're following these plain language guidelines, which it's just good writing. It makes writing clear, makes writing work for more people. And then I think this is a great opportunity to use generative AI. Sometimes you do need to provide the more complex information, maybe for legal reasons or for policy reasons, right? Well, when you have to do that, maybe you can provide a summary, right? That's good universal design for learning, good practice for UDL, which is our framework that we've developed at CAS for inclusive learning. So maybe you can provide a TLDR at the top. Too long, did not read, in case you've seen that before. And this is a great place to use AI. You can say something like, explain this to me like I'm a 9th grader, right? If you're meeting the requirements of WCAG, or if your learners are in 4th grade, explain this to me like I'm a 4th grader, right? So whatever it takes to make sure that those communications are as clear and as easy to understand as possible is really helpful. And then the last principle, robust, and here's the great news, is that if we've addressed the other 3 principles, then this one most of the time takes care of itself. And with robust, what we want to make sure is that the content and the tools that we've developed work not only currently, but with future platforms, right? So we don't know what those platforms are going to look like. It could be VR, it could be AI devices, like those are starting to come out now. Like a pin that has AI built into it. So we want to make sure that our content is ready for the future. And basically what we want to do is check our work. And so when we get to robust, we just perform a number of different tests. We can perform automated accessibility checking. And somebody mentioned Wave in the chat. I was just peeking real quick. And so Wave is a web-based accessibility checker. I'm going to show it to you real quick here. I'm going to grab the address for the AIM Center page that we're on. And I'm going to go to wave.webaim.org. And it's really easy. You just put the web address of the page you want to check. And let me state that for free, you can only check one page at a time. But you can see there is also some enterprise tools that are available for Wave. So you do that, and in just a few seconds, you get a readout. You'll see here that we have 0 errors. There are some alerts. These are things that the automated checker can't really, it's not sure about, so it thinks that we need to check manually. And then there's some features that we've included. And so it alerts us to that as well. And it says we have on contrast error. I will check on that. But it's a really nice way to do a quick accessibility check of a resource, again, that you might share with learners. So Wave is free, but as I stated, the free version only allows you to check one page at a time. And there are others, right? Wave is just one of them. I like it because even if you don't have like a lot of accessibility knowledge, it has some great reference tools built in. So it can really help you up your knowledge here. We also will perform manual testing. You already know about one of those, the no mouse challenge. And then finally, this is the ultimate test. Does it work for people with disabilities? So you will test it with assistive technology. And the great thing is that most systems nowadays have a built-in screen reader, or you can download a free one. So typically, these are the ones that we use as accessibility testers. NVDA stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. It's a free screen reader for Windows. Trivia is that it was developed by 2 blind computer programmers. So they know the need for a screen reader quite well. If you have an Apple device, whether that's a Mac, an iPad, an iPhone, heck, your Apple TV, your Apple Watch, they all have a screen reader built in called VoiceOver. And then on Android, if you have an Android device, there's a screen reader called TalkBack that's built in. So I've shared in the slides a link to DQ. They have a number of tip sheets, just basic screen reader commands and gestures that you can use, because some of these use keyboard commands, and some of them do both. You can use keyboard commands or gestures. So like, for instance, on my Mac, I have a trackpad that I use. I'm going to try to show you that. And instead of pressing a keyboard shortcut, I can just swipe to the left or swipe to the right. And it's the same as like pressing the tab key in a way. So sometimes you use gestures with some of these screen readers if your device has a trackpad of some sort. So, and you don't need to be, you know, I mean, the best test is if you get somebody who's a proficient user of these tools to test it for you. But you can also perform some quick tests using just a few basic commands. So you don't need to learn like the ins and outs of the screen reader. You just need to learn a few commands to be able to perform this kind of testing. So that was kind of a quick tour of Pour. I always tell people, pour it on from the beginning, right? And when it comes to accessibility. But we do have lots of resources on the AIM Center website. I encourage you to check them out. We have an entire section on designing for accessibility with the Pour principles. And then we have specific pages for websites, documents, video, math, how to publish with EPUB, which is a format for publications that was built with accessibility in mind from the start, and then also social media. How do you make your social media posts as accessible as they can be? Of course, you could always reach out to us if you have questions. We're pretty responsive. Twitter, I grabbed these slides from an old deck. It should be X, but I can't help myself. It's still Twitter to me. You can find us on the socials, @cast_UDL on X and @castudl on Facebook. You can always email us. We try to respond within 24 hours, aem@cast.org, and of course our website, which I shared with you a number of times today, aem.cast.org. So we are out of time. This webinar was designed to be 30 minutes, but I will stick around And for just a couple of minutes, if you have any questions, I was here by myself today, so I wasn't able to scan the chat as well as I typically do. But let me see if there are any last minute questions that I can answer. Let me give you the link for the slides, and I apologize I didn't make it accessible, which you can do now. Give me 1 second and I'll get you. And I will make it accessible this time. So let's say slides. Give me 1 second and see if I can do this. Actually, in this, bit.ly for AIM. There we go. That should work. Let me know if that link works, but that should get you the slides. And so again, encourage you, share them. They're there for you to share, but also take some time today and try out one of these things on Global Accessibility Awareness Day, whether it's checking a website for alt text or performing the no mouse challenge, or even just using AI to create a summary. That will be helpful. That will raise awareness and help us get us there in terms of accessibility. Hold on 1 second. I need to post it to everybody. So give me 1 second. Okay, now you'll see it. My bad. All right, let me know if you're able to see that. My bad. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. Hope you found it helpful, and we'll see you soon on the next webinar.